Hi guys, are you ready for a new episode of The Electronic Corner? I really hope so, because today we have yet another very interesting musician waiting for us. His name is Dominic Daub, he's from Germany, and he's the leader of a. Actually, that's the first question I would have to ask, so let's meet him. Hi, Dominic. Thanks a lot for accepting my invitation to this podcast. So, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. That's good. Actually, I always feel a bit embarrassed when I have to ask an artist how to pronounce his project name. But since you're German and you sing in German, so maybe a German pronunciation would be more appropriate. I mean, junior, of course, is not a problem. But what about that QEK? I mean, for the sake of the new fans that you will gather today after this interview,
Okay.
how do you want us to how do you want us to pronounce your project name? And what does this QEK mean?
Okay, it's pronounced QEK. Yeah, QEK Junior. And it means Qualitätsedelstahlkombinat, which is a kind of factory for little trailers in the former GDR. And we decided to name our project after this trailer because it's very minimalistic, as our music is very minimalistic too.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I must say. Okay, good. Now, I mentioned you sing in German. So, is that because you feel more comfortable writing lyrics in your native language, or is it because for the kind of music that you make, you feel that a hard-sounding language like German is more appropriate than a mellow-sounding language like English or others, for example?
I guess it's both because when we started making music, we were quite a lot influenced by bands like especially Daub, Deutsch-Amerikanische Freundschaft. Yeah. And they sang in German too. And so we started to use German vocals too. And of course, for me as a German native speaker, it's much more simple to speak and sing in German. That's the thing. It's
Okay.
because we're German and we are influenced by German bands like Daub, a bit Kraftwerk, of course by Depeche Mode, but mostly by Daub and Nizza Rap.
Okay. So, yeah, that makes sense. Um, Again, for those who don't understand German, do you have recurring themes in your lyrics, or you just write about anything that comes in your mind in that moment?
Oh, that's it differs because often our music or lyrics seem to be a bit Dadaistic, yeah, nonsense lyrics, some say. But all of our lyrics have a deeper meaning, I think. For example, from our latest album, Anomi, it's dealing with politics, but not at the first look. Yeah, so there are. I don't want to write lyrics that are quite obvious. For me, it's more or less important to have lyrics where the people have to think about because they are not obviously in their meaning at the first look.
I see. Yeah. Now, your song, as yourself mentioned, are quite minimalist in terms of sounds and melodies. So, in fact, it's minimal wave, what they call this subgenre
Yeah.
that you're doing. So, somebody could think, oh, so they like to make their life easy in studio because, of course, fewer melodies, fewer sound means that the recording process, the mixing, the mastering is easier than when you have something more complex. But what these people don't realize is that there is a challenge with that. There is a risk that the song becomes too repetitive and so boring. So for me, for example, it's quite difficult, the kind of music that you make, I think. And that's why I would like to ask you, what kind of tricks are you using during the recording and the composition process to make sure that a song doesn't become too repetitive and so that people are hooked on it from the beginning to the end and want to hear more?
Well, at first, I guess it's not too bad if the music is too repetitive, as you say, yeah. Because if you're influenced by bands like Kraftwerk, by Deutsch-Amerikanische Freundschaft, or even Nizza Rap, all their songs are quite repetitive, yeah. When we're in the studio and when I do some recordings, I often do very light changings, using filters, using cutoffs, and using a different drum pattern at one part of the song. So it's the differences are very, very difficult to hear, but they are there. We never use one sound, or seldom use one sound in the whole song from the beginning to the end. So it's got a lot to do with filters, attacks, something like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like subtle changes that people don't realize they are there, but actually that's what allow the song then to keep the people, interested from the beginning to the end. Okay.
If you would take a look, for example, on a song like Verschwende deine Jugend or Der Mussolini by Daub, they are very repetitive and they don't change the sounds at any time. And the songs work and they are great for dancing. And I guess more or less we do a kind of music for dancing, dance music, if you want to say so.
Yeah, they're hypnotic in a way, but it's pretty difficult, to make. There's a subtle line, let's say, between hypnotic and boring, at least to me.
Yeah.
So,
but I hope we are more hypnotic than boring.
Oh yes, of course. So, otherwise, you wouldn't have lasted for so many years, right?
Okay. Like and in the last few months, I started using gear that's not typical synth or something like that. It's more for generating noises, sampling noises, and bring back noise into the sound. So I guess you will hear it on the next album.
Oh, okay, great. And what you just said fits perfectly with my next question, which is, are you more an analog musician, like meaning you rely mostly on hardware in your studio and live, or a digital musician, so like VST all the way?
No, never. First of all, I work the whole day in a bureau, and I work the whole day with computers. So I don't use computers in the producing. I just have a Tascam multi-tracker, 24 tracks, and I use a very old Yamaha QY700 sequencer and only hardware synth. My first synth was in Quasi MIDI, Quasar, from German. It's, I guess, about 30 years old now. That was my first synthesizer. And the last one is this one. I got it today. It's, guess you can see it. It's a Behringer Toro.
Yes, I can see it. Cool.
Yeah, it's a Behringer Toro. It's a Moog Taurus clone. I got it today, and I will check this out afterwards. And I use different kinds of hardware synths like Mi Blip. You know this one?
Yeah,
and it's. I guess I just use strange synthesizers, not these mainstream synthesizers. That's a thing.
I see.
Because we do strange music.
You started your career as a guitarist anyway, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you are a sort of like traditional musician, if you want. You're not one of those like people who study computers and somehow use computers.
Yeah, that's true, because when I started recording synth music, I never planned to do this, because I left my band before as a guitarist, finished my master degree, and at that time I decided to build up my own little studio with an 8-track recording by Tascam and a sequencer. But I just wanted to have some tracks to play guitar on. And then I sorted out that it's much more simple to play and record this kind of music than using guitars. But the other way around, I still write a lot of the music on the guitar. When I write a bass line, for example, I do it often on an E-bass.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Since you can do it, why not using it? Now, can you tell us about your live setup? So what you use, if you bring your stuff with you, or you mostly rely on what is available in the venue you play in, things like that?
When we play live, recording, we do anything with analog synths or hardware synths. Playing live with this kind of gear is quite difficult, because if you put an analog synthesizer on stage, if you play for example, on a festival in the summer, it's quite hard to get the tune right, and so on and so on. So usually we use live just a computer for the backing tracks and do the vocals live. and add some additional effects or using some samples over the kind of playback.
I see. Okay, thank you. Now, do you feel that the arrival of streaming platforms like Spotify, which dominate the market now, was more a curse or a blessing for a project like yours? And by the way, just let me add, I love the fact that you really released your debut album Ausverkauf in mint green vinyl.
Yeah.
I think that is very cool. But anyway, the question is about Spotify and such. What do you think about that? And is it good for you or not?
I really don't know, because all our albums are available on Spotify or Amazon Music, but I don't know how many people listen there to our music or download our music on this kind of platforms. When we started doing music, we started using MySpace. Yeah, that was about maybe 15 years ago, and MySpace was quite huge at the time, and I never planned to play live with QEK Junior, but we released our first 3 or 4 songs on MySpace, and we got an first Kernkrach, the minimal label from Germany, contacted us for doing a single, and then I got a mate from England asked me if he wanted to play in Leeds or in Nottingham, and so everything was managed via MySpace in the beginning. So I don't think these platforms are a curse, because MySpace for us was very, very important. It's a pity that MySpace isn't active anymore.
Yeah, well, you're one of the few people actually who is missing it. I don't know why, but a lot of people hated it. And when it was replaced, they thought it was a good thing. But I can see your point about MySpace doing good for you. Now, speaking about your music production, let's say, last year you released a brand new album, 11 years after the previous one. And
Yeah.
I know that in between you did some live performance, and so that the project was not totally dormant. But can we hope that we will not have to wait another 10 years before we get some new
No, we're
music?
just producing the new album. I started recording the first tracks. Finished the first 4 tracks, I think so. We played a lot live in the last 2 months, so I hadn't so much time doing studio work. But I hope it will be released next year.
Oh, okay, that's very good news. So looking forward to that. So we are already at the last question, and there's a tradition here on the Electronic Corner is about your studio or whatever you want to show us. So I'm
Yeah.
really curious and looking forward to see it, and let's do it now.
Okay, as promised, let's get a quick glimpse on the new Behringer Toro. I especially bought it to get some more powerful basses into my sound. I get it out of the box and put it into my setup, and let's see how it sounds. I've already programmed a little bass line with a kick drum, and I'll start this sequence now. This is the Toro sound, it's a preset sound. Tuba sounds like that. The bass sound, percussive one. You can put an amount of glide into the sound. Change the decay. And octaving the sound. The funny thing is, of course, the variable sounds. Put the sound louder. done next is recording a track with the Toro. First of all, I will show you my song without the Toro, and afterwards I put it in. I will mute it now. So this is a song without Toro, and then you will listen to the sequence with the Toro.
Wow, cool. I mean, it's the first time we have an unboxing here on the Electronic Corner. I think it's a very good idea. And so I hope other artists also will copy your idea whenever they get something new, and will show us how it feels like, taking a new toy, let's say, out of the box and see how it looks like. So thanks a lot, Dominic, for the time you devoted to us and for your detailed answers. And good luck for the new album whenever it will come out.
Okay.
And take care.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. Bye-bye.